You'll have seen from the joining instructions and from the message I left in the chat earlier that I'm going to be using RStudio Cloud, which is a way of saving you from having to get R now or RStudio. It gives you the same software as I've got, and it means you've got the same, both the same packages and the same data to work from. Don't want to worry about what that all means. We'll deal with that shortly, but it means that we're all on the same playing field right at the beginning. But before I go much further, let's just set the scene. Firstly, I'm saying on my title slide R and then saying AKA the tidyverse. Now, R is a language in the same way that Windows is a language, Microsoft Windows, and the Mac, the iOS operating system for Mac is a language. And you can do a lot of things with R. It's a statistical program for analyzing statistics. It was invented, just the fun part is that, why is it called R? There used to be something called S, which is also known as SPSS, which was a very expensive programming language that did statistics. And 21 years ago, a group of 3 statisticians in New Zealand decided they'd have a go at making their own open source version. So they started to create a new language. All their names began with the letter R, and then somebody spotted that if they called it R, they'd always be 1 step ahead of S. So that was the joke, and that's why it's called R. Now, base R is the language which you can do quite a lot with, but it's quite a difficult language to learn. It's fine if you're a mathematician and a statistician. It's much harder if you're a journalist. So along comes, about less than 10 years ago, another New Zealander called Hadley Wickham, who created the first visualization package in R that everybody began to use, called ggplot. And gradually he built a whole suite of packages. We'll come to packages in a minute. Packages, and nowadays they're known as the tidyverse. I won't bore you with why, but that's what you need to know. So the tidyverse is like a dialect of R, and it's a lot easier to learn. It is sneered at by some purists in the R world who think that real R is the only R you should learn, and everything else is some kind of horrible mangling of the language. And actually, most journalists I know use the tidyverse, and we'll come on to what that is and what that implies for you shortly. So why are we going to use R at all? Some of you may have done Layla's sessions on coding. Layla and I work closely together at the Centre for Investigative Journalism and run some courses there. She doesn't do R, I do. But R is in common with any coding language. Why you use it? Because mainly it's reproducible. And we're going to see that today. If I was doing a session for you on Excel, you would have to watch me very carefully. You'd have to take notes. You'd have to remember exactly what I did, or do it at the same time as me. And then you'd have to remember how to do it tomorrow and the next day. In R, you write a script, and the script will live on your hard drive for you to use anytime. And you could share that with somebody. If you don't keep up today, do not panic, because at the end of the session, I will share with you the script I've used, and you will be able to run that yourself, and it will do all the same things that I've just shown you. So you won't have to take those sort of notes which say, click up here, do this, do that. You will be able to just keep a copy of my script that should then match what we've done. So that also saves panic. And it means you can share things. You can reproduce things. Like you might do a project once a year when a company produces its results and you make some nice graphs from its results. Or a country always announces its inflation figures or something, and you want to do a graph with it. But you kind of forget in between what you've done. That doesn't matter. You keep the script for making my inflation my annual inflation graph, and you just pull it out once a year and run it and add in this year's figures. And it would just make the graph you did last year and add in this year's figures. So everything is reproducible. It means that you can show it to colleagues and show you how you did something, what you did, and why you did it. And that's what we'll be covering today. R is open source, so it's free, completely free. It's maintained by an army of software experts and statisticians, and it's very well regulated. There are no bugs. I mean, there are bugs in it, but they get rid of them. There's no malware or anything like that. It's a very good system. It contains packages. Those are the little apps that do various jobs, and Tidyverse is about 19 or 20 apps that all work together, and we'll see them working today. And it's well documented. If you search for some of these package names on YouTube or DataCamp, Stack Overflow, you will get tutorials, answers to your problems, and so on. The only thing I find slightly annoying is that, of course, R is one letter of the alphabet. And if you search for R on Google, you will get millions of useless results. So what people tend to do is use R stats as one word, R-S-T-A-T-S, and that will help them find R-related things. But actually, if you use the name of the package or the problem you're trying to do with R, it will understand that you're looking not for a letter, but for this, this program. So packages, the reason I've chosen a belt like this is the R is the belt and the packages are the tools, and you put the belt on every time you use R. So every time you start R, it starts up in a kind of empty mode, and it will just run base R functions. So it can do arithmetic and it can do basic, some very basic things. But if you want to do anything clever, you're going to need one of those tools or several of them. So you have to run them every time you run R. And we're going to see that in action shortly. So you install them once. So you go to the store and you buy the tool and you put it in your belt once, but you pull the tool out of the belt every time you need to use it. And it's very important you see that distinction. You're going to download quite a lot of packages when you first start running R on your own machine, but you only do that once. Then you run them each time you need them in any particular R session. And this is what we're going to look at. We're going to use, this is R Studio. This is one of the last slides we'll be looking at now before I go to the live R Studio site. So there are these 4 windows on R Studio. If you didn't get R Studio, you would have, and if you just ran R and clicked on the R icon on your computer, you would get this bottom left thing where it says R is a collaborative project with many contributors, blah, blah, blah. And it ends with a not very helpful caret or V lying on its side. And from that, you're supposed to be able to know what to do next. And so it's pretty forbidding. And I tried that the first time, and you don't really know what's going on. And you need to be able to run scripts, which, as I said, are going to be there when you save them. You can run them again and again and again, and you can make them perfect. And they get written in the top left. You can rearrange these 4 windows, but most people don't. So the top left is where you write the scripts. You write your code in there, and then you perform it down there. You don't have to go down to the second box. You watch stuff happening there, but you don't need to write code there. If you do write code there, it runs once and disappears. And this is something that I wasted a lot of time on when I first got R, because I used to write code. I'd then go back to the manual, understand what I'd done. And of course, when I finished the session, everything disappeared. So I never learned a thing because all my code had gone, whether it worked or not. So all the mistakes were mingled with the correct answers, and I couldn't find them again. Then I realized you have to write scripts. So we're dealing with the top left and watching the fun happening in the bottom left. And then there are various things that happen in the top right, and it'll be much more much easier to explain when we start using it shortly. And then, sorry, in the fourth one, the bottom right, where it says user library here, you've actually got the files you're working with, the graphs you plot, the packages. This is where there's a complete list of your packages, the help, and then there's a viewer, which is basically a way of looking at our help files on the web. It's just sort of like a tiny mini browser in effect. So I'm going to, I think the last one I need now, so there's, sorry, packages and plots and help, and the plots and so on. But this will be more obvious when we start using it in a moment. So for those of you who didn't get the message in the chat, you need, I'm assuming that you've opened an account with rstudio.cloud, and you are now going to use this bit.ly link to get to the project that we're going to do today. And I think this is the bit which I'm slightly afraid of, but it's still better than doing one of those sessions where you try to install it for everybody. Let me just switch to a different share now, because the rest of the session is going to be on my RStudio page. And it's already gone to sleep while I've been talking. That's how interesting and engaging your lecture is. His computer goes to sleep while he's talking. Okay, let us get to this. So RStudio Cloud is a way of sharing stuff. You're running a virtual copy of RStudio and R in the cloud. This one I actually pay for, so you don't have to. But it means that you can visit this after today's session. But I'll probably end up deleting your projects in a few days. I'll keep an eye on who's doing anything, but you can use this for today and probably for the rest of into next week.
Jonathan, sorry, would you mind just copying and pasting that link in again? I can't actually copy and paste it in Zoom, I don't think.
It's a bit.ly, so that you can even write it, as long as you get, it's case sensitive, as long as you write bit.ly/R for journalists 2021, it should work. Terrific. So that will take you to the R Demo 2021 project, or probably, I will just go back a step, it should get you to the sort of what's called the space. Hang on a minute. I slipped then. You should have, somebody called MS has already got there. That's what we're hoping for. Demo project, yes. This is good. So people are getting there. That looks as if it's working, I hope. So I'm going to try to get back into my own project, which is the difficult bit. If you get into a project, don't forget there's a thing at the top right that tells you to make a copy of it, basically. So you make your own copy, which is why untitled project is fine. 422, yeah, people are doing this, but where's my project gone? Hold on a minute. Let's have a look at the members. Yeah, people are doing it. I've got to find myself here. Here we are. Get into my copy. And it is an assignment. So what happens is you will get into a project which has already got the files in it and it's got the packages in it. Otherwise, we waste ages downloading them all. So I'm going to start analyzing some data, and we're going to go through the steps of getting some data. Then we're going to see what we've got, have a sort of quick look at it, and then we'll start doing some stuff to it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, you can all see my RStudio screen, right, Ian? Yeah, okay. So I'm starting with a blank script. If you want to start a script, then click on File, New File, and R Script. If you want to just watch this show and then catch up later, that's fine, because you will get the script at the end. If you just want to watch and concentrate on what I'm saying, that's another way of doing it. You'll still have your own copy of the project, and you'll still get at the very end of the session, I will send everybody a copy of the script. But if you want to follow along, that's another way of learning, and it's probably slightly better. But some people enjoy just watching what's going on and then looking at the script later and maybe taking notes as they go. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is to run the tidyverse. So the first, we're going to write our very first command here, which is called library. Basically, take it from the library and use it. And if I start typing tidyverse, it will appear there because I have it installed. It is in my list of packages.
Sorry, Jonathan, we've got a couple of questions, and I myself am wondering, can we just take one step back? How did we get to that screen from, do we create a new project within your assignment, or
yeah, you open my assignment. Sorry, that's a good point, Ian. You open my assignment, and then when you're in it, somewhere to the top right, it says something like make a copy or make your own copy of this. Top right, there's a menu, just a click.
So I am in our demo. So I've clicked on our demo 2021 with your name underneath it.
I tell you what, why didn't you for a moment share your screen?
Yes.
And then we'll see what, because the trouble is now I'm a member of our Studio Cloud, I can't see what other people see.
Great idea. Okay. So
let's do it that way.
So you should see my screen at the moment.
Perfect, right. So if you, so you're in our demo 2021, which is created by me, and you've written if you could just go back one step. So if you click on the our demo 2021 on the left there, so that we get to the main space.
I am clicking.
And then I'll just help you into that. I think you've already done the right thing.
I'm clicking and not getting an.
Okay, so click on projects at the top. Actually, click on members.
No, I don't think I have access to members.
Oh, no. That's annoying. Okay, well, click on your untitled project. Let's do that. See what happens. See if I want to see what you get. So click on files in the box. No, sorry, the files plural. The box 4. That's the one on the right, bottom right. Yeah, that is the right project. So you've got one which is called Untitled Project. I would rename that so that we can find it again, called Ian's Project or whatever you want to call it. Other people should be in one that says our demo 2021 Untitled Project. Okay. I think everybody should have something like that by now. If you've got a problem still, then tell Ian in the chat, and we'll try and sort this out. But I promise you, this is quicker than doing it the old-fashioned way.
Fantastic, thank you, John.
I have done a session where we tried to get everybody to get the same packages on their screen, and it was 40 minutes of hell.
I can imagine. Great, thank you.
So, right. I'm going to go back. Have you, Arkisma, have you tried, I don't know, if you try the link, bit have you got an RStudio Cloud account? That's the first thing. You must have one of those. Yes. But then if you use the bit.ly link, bit.ly / what did I say it was? I'll put it back in the chat because that way I can. It's R4 Journalists 2021. If you use that, it should take you there. I don't see any other reason why it wouldn't take you there.
Okay, so shall I do that? So I'm going to use the bit.ly.
I should open another window, another tab, please, Ian.
Another tab, yep. And so it's bit.ly.
bit.ly / capital R, number 4, journalists with a capital J, 2021. Let's see what happens. You get to that, and you see Ian Project, but you should have. You'll have nothing. You'll have an assignment. You click. That's what you found, isn't it, Ian? You clicked on the assignment.
This was all blank, and so I clicked new project. So that's
okay.
So I didn't want to. That was my mistake, was it?
Okay. No, that seems right. Click on. What happens if you click new project?
So if you click new project, it sets off on a new.
But does it? But the key thing is it should have the files that I put in there in that project. So I want it, when it opens it. Once this has worked, we'll probably close this tab.
Maddie says the new file, it has your files too, she's saying.
Yeah, okay.
Michael did the same.
Okay, that seems fine. Right, I think everybody's on the right page now.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if not, see me afterwards. I'm going to take over the screen again, and I'm going to go back to this screen, which I hope will be our home now for the next hour and a half. So what I've got here is a new script. So you open a new script, which is, if you like looking at menus, go File, New File, R Script, or you can do Control, Alt, Shift, and N for New, which sounds a mouthful, but it's actually, they're all Control, I don't know about the Alts, but Control, Shift, and N will do it. So now I've written my first instruction in this untitled script, which I ought to give a title to. So I'll call it save and call it session. I'm going to call it session script. And this is what you're going to get a copy of at the end, session script. And it will automatically put a .r on the end. Now that won't appear in your project because you've already started the project and I've now created it since then. But anyone joining the project now will get this one called session script. So library means run the installed package with the name I'm about to give you. And you'll see this is the very basic syntax of R code, which is an instruction or a verb, in this case, a library. And then what do you want? Either, it's always going to be brackets. Sometimes the brackets are empty, which you'll see is a bit confusing. But often that's what do you want and what do you want to do it to? In this case, library just says, okay, which package do you want me to run? And up here you see the run the current line. So your cursor should be anywhere in that line, touching the instruction. So somewhere in those words, just one cursor. Don't highlight more than one word, a part of a word, because that will be confusing. Just anywhere in there, and then click run. And you will then see the tidyverse will start to run. And what you're looking for in the bottom here is that you do not have any problems. You don't have any error messages. As long as you have a V lying on its side, then everything is good. Now, this is the first of the confusing things I'm going to do. Is if we look at the files list, we're actually going to open up this very large, well, quite large, 33 megabyte file called facilities.csv. And it's so big, it's about 100,000 records, that I actually find that it tends to crash RStudio Cloud. It works okay in R, on my own computer, but it often crashes RStudio Cloud. So I'm going to use, this is the confusing bit, I'm going to use a different program, but I'm not going to run the program. I want to show you a different way of asking for, this is like saying, I want to use this tool, but I only want to use one part of it. So I'm going to type this, and then I'm very bad at typing and speaking at the same time. So I'm going to type it and then explain what I put. And it, again, if you want to follow along, it'll be absolutely fine, copying exactly what I put. If you just want to watch, you'll still get a copy of this at the end. So what is this? What I've done is I've said, having told you all about the tidyverse, I'm actually going to use a different package called data table because it has a much more efficient way of opening huge data sets. I opened one the other day, which was nearly 5 million records, and I had to use data table. Our tidyverse just can't cope with it. It's just too big. And so rather than risk that on a live session now, I'm going to do this. And so fread is one of the verbs inside data table. And so what this means here is I put data table, data.table, and then 2 colons. And then when you put 2 colons, in fact, I'll show you down here, just as a demo, if I put data table and 2 colons, it will then show all the possible things you could ask it to do. I don't use data table for anything except this. You can run through this. It tells, look at that, all these different functions that are built into data.table. I must explore them one day. I'm going to delete that. But the one I want is fread, which is fast read. In other words, read a file quickly. And then we put the bracket, because that's what we want it to do now. And we have to put in quotes the name of the file we're going to open, which is over here, facilities.csv, lowercase f. If in a moment, I'm going to paste this into the chat, just so that if anyone's having trouble typing it, it will work. So I'm going to run that. And you will see over here, I'll just make this a bit smaller. One thing has appeared. This is, I said I'd explain this box. It's much easier when you see things happening here. This is, I've called it FAC. I could call it anything I like, but FAC will do. It's short for facilities. And there are 104,258 observations or rows, and there are 16 variables. In a minute, we'll come to exploring that and see what we've got. But for the moment, we can see it's open correctly, no error messages. I'll just pop this in the chat. So if anybody's had trouble reading my writing, you can just paste this into your own script and run it. So there you go. If you want to collect that from the chat, I'm not going to do that for everything, but every now and again, it's worth doing, because data.table and the 2 colons and fread are all one word in effect. And then the brackets, facilities.csv, close quotes, close brackets. You will get lots of weird error messages when you start using R. So far, we haven't had any, but we will get some, I'm sure. Usually, it means you've either forgotten a comma, or you've forgotten to close a bracket, or you've opened a bracket, but not, sorry, you closed a bracket, but not opened it, or you've opened a quote and not closed it. Those are the usual ones, and they throw out all sorts of useless, unhelpful error messages. But basically, every time you get an error message, just check your typing, because that's where it's going to be. At your level, my level of using R, that's where the problem's going to be. You've typed it wrong.
Jonathan, just a quick question from Sarah, if you don't mind. The FAC less than hyphen. She's asking. Oh,
thank you. Good question.
What does that stand for?
Thank you for reminding me. And that's the sort of question which is going to keep me honest all day. Now, that in effect, that means equals. And sometimes equals will do the same job. But get in the habit of this. There's been a debate on Twitter recently about this. Get in the habit of doing this. What it means is everything to the right of that symbol, so everything there, is going to be the name of that is going to be FAC. So in other words, what I'm saying is, take data table, the package, use the verb fast read, open facilities.csv, and call the result FAC.
It's a shortcut.
It's not a shortcut. It's actually, it's what's called an assignment. So everything to the right of it is then named whatever is to the left of it. So we're going to do another one in a moment, because we need 2 files open, and the other one is the releases. So I'm going to call this, let's call it releases. We could call it Ian if we wanted to. It would still work. Releases, and then if you want to use the shortcut to write that, instead of having to find the V lying on its side and then the hyphen, you can do Alt minus. That will work as well. And now we're going to take data table again and ask it to do a similar job. But if we're going to open the one called releases.csv. So guess what I'm going to put? I'm going to put releases.csv. In fact, I'm going to call that rel for short. I know why, because most of my script has got the word rel in it. But you could call it anything you like except a number. Do not give things numbers. If it begins with, yeah.
Yeah, no. Carolyn's asking, is it comparable to defining a variable? Is it the same?
Yes, it is, and it's more than that. You can define a variable, and I will be doing that later on. But in this case, if you like, the variable is the whole data table, which is this 104,000 rows. but that's a good way of saying it is. I could say that, for example, if I go down here, I can put X is 4. So if I hit that, then X is 4 appears in my ready stored values. Now it's a fairly basic one. I could say X is pi, and then put all the numbers of pi up to 25 decimal places. And then it would, every time I called X, it would insert 4. So I have assigned it in the same way. So you can assign a variable, but it's way more than just being a variable. Why did I put that in the bottom and not up there? Because I don't particularly want to keep it. I don't need that in my script. I just ran it for just for now. There's nothing wrong with going down here. It's just that most things you do, you want to keep a copy of, and they will be here. And I've not put in the double, I've forgotten to put in fread. Told you I can't talk and type. So now if I run rel data table releases, and I'll copy that, and these are essential to get you started. If you don't get this far, you'll get lost very quickly. I'll pop that in the chat as well. Is there a reason why I removed the colons from data table? No, I forgot. I put them back in. Well spotted. Right, so now we've got two tables that we're going to work with here. And let's look at them. Let's have a quick look. If I click on, now there's a funny thing happens here. This little play, let's see what happens. If I click on that one, which is the blue dot with the sort of play symbol in it, it will sort of give me a preview over here, which is not very helpful. If I click it again, it closes. Much more useful, if I click on it, on the name of it, FAC, it then, this is called view. So it's now showing me what it is, and it resembles a spreadsheet. It looks very much like a spreadsheet. It's a data table. It's got rows, it's got columns. And we can have a quick look at the sort of things that are in here, because we may want to know what they are. And did you notice down the bottom, it happened so quickly, when I clicked on FAC, down here it said view FAC. So every click I do translates, if I use a click at all, translates into some kind of command. And if it's a command, it means you can write it down. If you can write it down, you can save it and run it another time. But view, and rather annoyingly, view is one of the few commands that has a capital letter. Nobody knows why, but all the other ones are lowercase, except for view. Nobody knows why. If you write lowercase view, it'll say command not found. So now if I want to look at the other one, which is rel, I could do it down here. I could say view rel and close the bracket. And then I run it by hitting return. And there is my rel. But looking at them, and because, I mean, there's 26,000 rows of rel, and there's 104,000 and a bit more rows of FAC facilities. These, just so you know, this is from the European Environment Agency. Every facility, so every factory, every farm, every brewery, every chemical works, power station in Europe, and I mean not just the EU, but Norway, Britain, various others, everybody has to register with the European Environment Agency that they are doing processes which will release chemicals or gases into the air, the water, or onto the land. And they have to report every year how much they've released. It's a bit late, but you know, we can still study it. So this is what we've got here. We've got the names of the facilities, of which there are 104,000, and we've got 26,000 releases. So let's have a look at what we've got. This is where you would actually explore the data. Now you could sit and look at it just like you would look at a spreadsheet, but it's much easier to do this kind of thing. So I'm going to do a couple of simple commands. First of all, we've got 16 variables in here. What are they? Well, if I ask it names, FAC, So that command names, open bracket FAC, and that's why I gave it a short name, because I'm going to have to type it a lot. It then tells me what those 16 names are. Reporting year, name of feature, main activity code. It's got a longitude and latitude, which may be useful if we want to make a map later, if we've got time. It's got the city, postcode, country code. The main things that I might want to know a little bit about there are the reporting year. What's the main activity? What are they doing? Or the main activity name. So the code is going to be some kind of 3-letter or longer code. Then the activity that they're doing. But it doesn't tell me anything about what they're releasing, which is why I need the release data as well. So let's have a look. You can use another simple thing, and this is going to be, I'm going to pause and explain what I've typed in a moment. So I'm going to say, take FAC. And that's going to be, don't worry, I'm going to explain what the hell that is in a moment. FAC, and then I want you to count. Let's have a look at the main activity name. And it does an autofill for you to save you all that typing, which is nice. And then I'm going to say sort the result equals true. Okay, so what have I typed? Before I run that, what have I typed? I've said FAC. So take FAC, the thing that I call FAC. And then, so this strange thing, which is a percentage, and a greater than, and another percentage. Don't ask why it's that, it is, just is. That means, and then. So take this, FAC, and then count how many times each activity name appears, and then sort it in descending order. Sort equals true means put it in descending order, because that's mostly what we want. Now it will become clear. If I run that line of code, down there, it says, actually, it's not very easy to read the way it's been done, but let's go up to the top and see the best one at the top of them. So up the top here, we've got, it hasn't, that's not helpful. It's aligned them in such an unhelpful way. What on earth is it doing? Sorry, folks. Oh, yes, it's done that. Installate. So the number one, in terms of how many there are, is installations for the intensive rearing of pigs. And the number two is installation for the intensive rearing of poultry. Installation for the disposal of non-something. It's, if you've run it, I hope it's come up better on your screen than mine. You can move these borders around and make your screen look slightly different, but that's kind of irritating. Let's just have another look, because it might be easier to read, let's look at what else is possible. Let's look at the city. How many cities are there? So I could just copy that and paste a new one, but this time I'm going to just change the word city. Put the word city instead of activity name and run that. So now we see that the first one with 272 mentions is London. Second is Holstraten. The next one is confidential. It means it's been redacted. And then not available, 213. Then Antwerp. And it runs on down until it gets to the bottom of the list. And one of them is in, that seems to be either, that could be Bulgaria, I would think. So the other thing is have we got countries? Yes. Let's just look at the list of names of the columns. I think we've got a country or country code, because then we're going to do something with that. It calls it just country code. Okay, let's do that. So I'm going to run it again. This is a different, I'm going to make a different copy, and I'm going to say, take out main activity name and country code. It'll autofill the rest. So now Yeah, that's better. This is easy to read. That's what I was hoping for. So GB has 18,398, DE 14640. So this is how many facilities does each one have in there. I think it's time we had a look and saw what we have under the releases data frame. So we could just view it, but it's 26,000 rows. So again, I'm just going to explore it using the same sort of language. So rel, release, that's the name. That's why I gave it a short name. Count, well, actually, let's see what the names are. What have we got in rel? And this, you'll see now why I run the names one down in the bottom, because I like to see the result down there. So rel. So we've got 20 variables. It's got reporting year, facility name, activity, but also it's got pollutant name, the medium, so where did they release it, pollutant code, and it's also got quantity. Now, total pollutant quantity and accidental pollutant quantity. These are calculated. So if you're let's say a brewery, for every 1,000 liters of beer you produce, you will automatically produce a certain amount of CO2, a certain amount of, I don't know, acids, etc., etc. So just because you're a brewery and you've got a certain amount of production, it will know that your total pollutant quantity will be so many kilos. But then if you accidentally spill a load, you have to report it separately. And then that's the accidental pollutant quantity in kilos. So that automatically starts to suggest to me some questions I could ask the details from the releases data. Things like, let's see, rel, and then, so we're using this thing, it's called a pipe. It sort of has a pipeline that takes your command from the beginning to the end, because you'll see later on that we will get many, many pipes in a block of code. It just says, at the end of this line, do something in the next line, then do something, then do something, then do something. So at the moment, we're saying take this and then do this. So count, let's say pollutant name. And now I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of just counting how many, well, let's do that the first time. Let's say how many times does each pollutant get named in that list? So just say true. So count pollutant name sort equals true. And we see that, guess what the first, anyone want to guess what the top one is? It's going to be, it's new, it's ammonia, 5,663. Nitrogen oxide, 1,690 mentions. Well, how many times it's there is perhaps not important. So let's just do something else. We're going to do a weighted total. So we're going to say, don't count how many times it appears, multiply by the, what's it called? I'll just put a comma there. Equals total pollutant quantity, that's it. So take the pollutant name and then find the pollutant quantity in kilos for that name and add them all up. So we say sort equals true. So it's now saying the top one, and it's gone and put it into mathematical language, is how much? Yeah, the top one is carbon dioxide. And it's, look at that, it's a huge amount. It's 12 noughts, 1 and 12 noughts, which is a trillion. So it's over several years, but it's over 1 trillion kilos of carbon dioxide. And we've got some chlorides, carbon monoxide. That's quite a lot. That's 1.9 billion kilos of carbon monoxide, 1.4 billion of methane. So what should we study? Let's just do one more thing. If I run that same code, but I change it in one way. Oh, sorry. I'm going to add one thing in here, pollutant name, but I also take country. Is it country name? Or country code pollutant name. So in other words, it's now going to group it by country. And we can see that the top one is Poland with 1.8 and 11 noughts. And then the second one is GB with 1.44 and 11 noughts kilos of carbon dioxide.
Jonathan,
right. Yes.
Could I ask you just to pause at one moment? Because
funny enough, I was about to pause. But
can we just take that line 16 and can you just talk us through again just exactly what that line, the instructions are on there?
Yeah.
Just as a good way of recapping, maybe.
Oh yes, I was about to do that actually. Yes, this is where this is going to start looking quite complicated, but don't panic. So what it says is take REL, so the releases data that I've called REL. Then, so this is the pipe, which you can either type with a % greater than %, or you can do Control Shift and M for more. Then count. So the verb is count. And then you have to open the bracket because you say, what do you want me to do this to? So you're going to take the column called country code. So you group all the country codes together and group all the pollutant names together under each country. And then do a weighted total. So by adding up the total pollutant quantity in kilos for each pollutant name. And sort it in descending order of quantity. So it's done that. So it's in this little table down below. It says Poland, carbon dioxide, and then however many zillion kilos of carbon dioxide. Spain, and so on. And then further down, it tells you what the bottom one is. So the last one is Romania, and they haven't even told you what it was. So there's there's quite a lot of interesting confidentiality in this data, but that's a different story. So there's some dioxins and so on. So I wanted to pause at that point. So what we've done in effect is make some very simple pivot tables. If you've done Excel and you put 3 in my little survey at the beginning, then this is a very fast way of doing a pivot table. We've taken the data and we said, okay, add up how much each pollutant is and group it by country. So it's quite powerful in one line, which I can then keep and run anytime I want. So if I download in a month's time this same data set and just open it, I can run this code and do a very simple pivot table multiple times on different things, so pollutant name, total amount, and so on.
And Jonathan, Eloise is asking, is there a directory of commands that we can easily find, just to help us?
Yes, good question. So what we need to do is, if I write the word count down here, do you see how there's a little ghost? It says there is the count. Now this is not very helpful, but can you see a yellow box on my screen?
Yes.
Right. So firstly, next to where my cursor is, it's opened up a curly bracket saying dplyr. Now, dplyr is one of the sub packages that we're using within the tidyverse. Dplyr, the joke is that it's D for data and pliers for manipulating data. It's a set of pliers. This is Hadley Wickham has a strange sense of humor, and he gives things odd names. So dplyr is the sub part of tidyverse we're using. And if you want to know what that actually means, you can put in down here. I'm putting it in the bottom because it doesn't need to be in my script, but you can put it in the script if you want. If I put a question mark and then count and hit return, over here it opens up the help page. So where it says help on the right hand bottom box, as well as files, plots, and packages, I have help. And it automatically opens up the help. I'll just make it a bit bigger. And it tells you what it does. Now, these help files are written in a language which is consistent for everything. So they're always written in the same format. They always start with a description, and they work their way through various explanations, and then there are some examples. The description is often, depending on how technical the package is often written in such a technical language, I don't understand it. But what I do understand is the examples. And so I scroll down to the bottom and I look at, you've got the argument, so it tells you what could I put in here? But right at the bottom, it shows you some actual examples. And the useful thing is when you download R, the basic package, and the tidyverse, you get a lot of sample data built into it that you can then work with. So this Star Wars that it refers to is not a joke. There is a data set in there, which is Star Wars characters. And you could, so it's showing you how you could count the different species in the Star Wars character list and so on. So because I had the tidyverse running or loaded, it recognized count as soon as I typed in $count. But if you haven't got it loaded, like data table was not actually loaded, you can do it this way. You can say, I've got data table installed, but I'm not running it. So I can do the same thing I did at the beginning and say, I'd like you to tell me a bit more about fread. And if I hit return, it'll say it's a fast and friendly file finagler. And it shows me all the things it can do. As I say, this is in technical language. The more you use R, the more you'll understand this. At the beginning, it'll be gobbledygook. So I just jump straight to the bottom where you can see examples. So in every version, it's always the same order. It's often written in terribly difficult language. And then at the very bottom, you have references and, where is it? There should be some example. There we are, examples. Even some of the examples are not very good, but it's consistent. If you get stuck, then I would Google that. I would even Google that whole thing, data table, : fread. Or if I wanted to, if I wasn't sure where count came from, I could go count, so it's dplyr, 2 colons, and look at all the different things there are. This is, your original question was, where do I find what all the possible verbs are, all the possible instructions? Here they are, right in the name of the package in the console at the bottom, and then 2 colons, and it will show you every single possible thing that you can use. Since we've mentioned that, I'm going to jump for a moment to the rest of the internet and give you this address. If you prefer to read it separately on your browser, you can see my browser, right? Yeah. You can see rdrr.io, which I'm going to put in the chat. And there it is. As Michael has pointed out, there are, within your copy of RStudio Cloud, you have also got, and I've got to be very careful I don't disconnect my screen. It's going to be, I can never get back to it without turning it off anyway. Just restart. If you go back to if you click on the 3 lines on your RStudio Cloud, it opens up this sort of big menu, the top menu. And at the bottom, you've got a guide, primers. So there are some quite useful little instructional videos, some cheat sheets. Those are the 3 you really want. You don't need current system status, and you can have your eyes water at the plans and pricing if you want, but we'll ignore that for now. So cheat sheets are very helpful. And that's another thing, you can look for R cheat sheets as a Google search. But I use that rdrr.io a lot because it's easier to read than this tiny little panel on your screen. And it's all the same stuff. It's the same details. and the links all work to other pages and other help files. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think it did, Jonathan, thank you.
Okay, so it may seem in some ways that we've not done very much, but we've opened a file and we've started to explore it. We've actually done a couple of pivot tables. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of filtering and sort of slightly reshape the data to suit ourselves. So hang on just a minute. I just need to remind myself well, let's just do it the quick way, which is down here, I'm going to run names again and ask it, remind me what the names in release are. Okay, so I want to look at this one called medium, because that's, well, let's see what's in medium. So if I go rel and then pipe, that's Control, Shift, and M for mother or more, and count. Let's do country code. So I'm going to group the countries anyway, just to have a little idea what's going on. And then medium, what on earth is medium? And I might as well do a weighted total, WT, equals total pollutant quantity. So we might as well, this is air, water, and land. But I want to see how much, are they putting more out into the air or onto the land or into water? Let's run that. So it's saying that the top one, the worst country, is Austria, which pumps 2.3 billion kilos of something, anything, into the air. It's probably CO2. It also is top of the water stakes, and then Belgium is third biggest polluter of the air, and then also water, and then Bulgaria. Oh, it's sorry, I didn't sort it. Sorry, it's not in worst order. Sort equals true. So now we will see what it's really up to. And it's Poland air, and then GB air, and then Netherlands air. There's loads. The air is, when you think this is all kilos, this is a lot of pollution. So let's have a think, which country and which medium and which year. Let's have a quick look and see what years are represented in here. Count, just want reporting year. Just how many, yeah, that'll do. So, oh, it's only 2018 anyway, so that's okay. So everything in this particular data set is 2018. So down here, it's telling me the reporting year comes up 26,214 times. Okay, let's look at that. So we know it's one reporting year. So let us say, what should we filter by? What would you like to filter? Well, let's look at, should we do GB? Or should we be xenophobic and reckon that everybody else is doing the polluting? Let's look at GB, shall we, see what's going on. So we'll do take rel. Now this time, I'm going to give a new name just to show you I can, releases. So we're going to call it something human, GB releases. And we haven't used this for a long time. This is the assignment arrow, the backward facing arrow, which is Alt minus, or just type less than and hyphen or a minus. So this is, we're going to do something slightly new here, because instead of just running my code and seeing what the result is, I'm going to make a new little data frame. I'm going to say GB releases will be rel, and then filter. I'll come back and explain this. As I told you before, I'm not great at talking and typing accurately. I can type, but I can't type accurately. And it's, I think, GB. And then let's say we only want, should we look at, what medium should we look at? Let's look at, I'm kind of bored with CO2. Everybody knows we're terrible at CO2. Let's do water. Right, now what's going to happen, I'm going to run those, there's 3 lines there. I'm going to run them to make sure it works, and then I'll explain what it all means. Yes, no, hasn't worked. Well, hold on. Oh, that's why it hasn't worked. It is case sensitive, and I needed capitals. Right, so this is what it's done. I've said, take rel, and then, so pipe, filter, and then use country code as the column I want you to filter. And then this is slightly annoying, but it's very annoying to explain, but not difficult to understand. Double equals. You have, this is a convention in a lot of computing languages. You have to put equals twice. Because if you don't, it's an assignment. If I said equals, I'd actually be saying country code equals GB. So the name country code means GB. No, it isn't. I want you to find all the country codes where it is GB. So you just have to learn that it's 2 equalses, meaning equals. Filter country code is GB. So in quotes, and it's capitals, GB. And then I want you to also filter that the medium column, double equals, water in capitals. Now, by doing that, I've created over here a new mini data frame called GB releases. If I look at that, it is only GB, it's going to be only GB places. It's got street names, it's got cities, it's got postcodes, but it's exactly the same as the rel. It's just that it's now only got 3,534 rows because they are the British releases into, what did I say, water. Does that make sense? Hello, does that make sense, Ian? Everybody?
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm going to do something. This is what I tend to do. I've made myself a mini data frame. So this would be the same as if you're in Excel, I might have done a filter for water and the filter for GB, and then I'd highlight everything and copy it and paste it into a new worksheet. Well, that's what we've just done. We've made our own mini worksheet, except, and this may be a bit confusing at this point, none of this stuff actually exists. If I want to take it home with me, I'm going to export it, but we'll do that right at the end. So at the moment, it's all sitting on my memory of my computer, and it doesn't. I can run this code anytime I like, and all these same results will happen. But then one day I might want to send Ian a copy of the spreadsheet, and I'm going to have to export that in order to send it to him, if he doesn't already have R, for example. So I'm now going to analyze the GB releases. And this is where we're going to do a pivot table in a more obvious way, I would say. So I'm going to say, I want to, let's take the top 20 companies that are polluting in the UK. Top, so I'm giving it a title. I always give it a title that makes sense to me. So top 20 GB water. That you can call it anything you like, but I give my new frame a name that is something I can read in a month's time and realize what it meant, not just call it 1, 2, 3, 75. So top 20 GB water companies. I'm going to take my GB releases that I've just created, because I know that that is all filtered, ready to be water and Britain only. And then, now this is the new stuff, group by. So this is that moment in a pivot table where you've drawn a blank pivot table and you're deciding what's going to go in the rows and what's going to go in the columns and what's going to go, what you're going to count. So the first thing I'm saying is, okay, group it by parent company name. And no, let's do it slightly different. I'm going to do it. So just like a pivot table, I'm going to say not pivot, not parent company name. I'm going to say main. I need a bit of space here. Main. What's it called? Activity, isn't it? sometimes you main activity name. That's what I want. Activity name and the parent company name. So that's this is designing my pivot table, because unlike the one I did earlier, which was just having a look at how much, what the total quantities were and that sort of thing, I want to keep this. I probably want to, I'm going to turn this into some kind of table, or I'm going to make a visualization with it or something. So I'm making a new thing called top 20 GB water polluters based on GB releases, and I'm grouping them by the main activity name, so what industry, and the company name. And now it's expecting me, this is the bit where you put in the values in a pivot table, and you say, I want you to summarize. So count up the, call it total. That's a new variable. I can give it any name I like. I could call it Jonathan if I wanted. And then it's based on total pollutant quantity. And then, excuse me, I'm going to arrange it. So put it in a descending order of the total. Finally, I only want the top 20. So I'm going to say, oops, head, that makes sense, top 20, head 20. So when I run that, it's going to make me this general sort of league table of activities and parent companies, and it's going to summarize them by a new variable called the total, which is the total of pollutant quantity by each company, and then arrange them descending and take only the top 20. So I should get, over on the right, a new one called top 20 GB water with 20 observations and 3 variables, and I have. If I click on that, it tells me the top one is Tata Chemicals, 3.2 and 8 zeros, so about 3.2 billion something. Well, we don't know what the something is yet, so why don't I quickly adapt that? So group by main activity name, pollutant name, and the parent company. It's best to put a space. It doesn't mind if you don't put spaces, but it just gets hard to read if you don't put spaces in after the commas. So I've just adapted that. I'll make a new copy. And now my top 20 will say main activity name, pollutant name is chlorides, I see, and then Tata is putting in. So it's made it easier for me to see what they're basically polluting. So apart from number 17, which is nitrogen, Thames water, everything else is chlorides that people are pumping into the water. Let's have a little pause, see how we're doing. Is everybody happy out there?
I think so, Jonathan. Any questions, folks, just at this point? We'll give Jonathan a bit of a breather for a few seconds. Any questions that you have? I think what's going to be helpful, Jonathan, is that we're recording this, and I think it'll be really helpful to go back through this again, in our own time and follow it a second time. I think it's been incredibly valuable to do it, try and keep up, but obviously we're some of us are missing things as well. So I think it'll be really useful to rewatch it. Frankie saying, did you just sort that by the amount of pollutants?
Yes. So this is slightly different from count. The thing I did earlier with count and sort, this has been added in really quite recently, and it knows that everybody does a descending order because they want to see the biggest to the smallest. So count, all that works with count, but later on, this is the more original, the older bit of code that's been around longer. So this is saying, so take group by, which was, group it by the activity name, the pollutant name, and the company name. So you've got your 3 columns. Then you always follow group by with either arrange or summarize or both. If you just start with group by and just stop there, you'll have a blank table. It just won't mean anything. So then it expects you to put summarize. So you can create a new thing called total, or I could call it total mess. Let's do that just to show you I can call it anything. I've created a new a new variable called total mess, and then it equals hang on, what some equals, oh, I've forgotten to put in a phrase. Oops, sorry, this is going to be even worse now. Sorry, people, this is, I told you I can't talk and do it at the same time. Right, let's just go serious a moment. In fact, this will make more sense. So the total is the sum of all the total pollutant quantity kilos. So if I run that, we should get a different result now. It may be similar, but actually I suspect it's going to be huger numbers. Let's have a look. Yeah, no, it's done it properly. Aha, that's better. You can read that now. So there it is. Look at all those. It's 1, 2, 3. It's 322 million kilos of chlorides in 1 year from Tata Chemicals Europe Limited. Is everyone feeling suitably disgusted about industry around Europe? This is just in GB, of course. So we could have a long look at that. We could decide that we want to look only at chlorides. Or let's just, because time is marching on, let's just do a couple of things. This is what it's really made for, is to make a plot. So let's do this thing, ggplot. So ggplot is a new sub package within the tidyverse, and this is the original Hadley Wickham draw a visualization package or program or app that he built into R and it's made him famous and popular. Everything else in the tidyverse came later. So ggplot. So this is a whole new thing we're going to do. We're going to make a graph using my top 20 GBs. So I'm going to say ggplot. So what do you want me to take? I'm going to take top 20 GBs. And now, because this is old, this is the confusing bit, and I can only apologize, that you have to put a plus and not a pipe. So why don't we put a plus normally? I don't know. Why do we put a plus in the old days? I don't know. Hadley Wickham is actually, you can find him on YouTube saying, I don't apologize, I'm not changing it. And nobody knows why. It just is one of those things. So here's a new instruction. Take the, so the AES means the aesthetic. So first of all, I'm saying ggplot. So use ggplot, take this data frame, the top 20 GB water polluters, and then in the AES, the aesthetic, what is going to be your X? What's going to be along the X axis? Let us have a main activity name. Main. And the Y is obviously going to be the total. Then you have to say, well, what shape do I want it to be? So the geom is going to be, so the geometric shape is going to be a column. Now, hopefully this is going to work. And let's zoom into it. So it's very crude at the moment because I'm going to have to do a lot of tidying up. It's done that. It's only taken 4 different activities. They've got very long names, so I'd need to change the names a bit. But I've done a very, very basic graph with 2 tiny amounts and 2 very large amounts. So urban wastewater and something else, which I can't even read. But that is our very first graphic, which we can now tidy up. But I could change it and say, let's do it this way. Let's say parent company name. So I can change it quite quickly. John Cole. Oh, and I want to say the color or the fill is the main activity. So I'm saying, okay, I can have more than X and Y. So my X-axis is going to be the parent companies. The total is going to be obviously how tall the column is, but they're going to be color coded according to what kind of activity they are doing. And then I'm going to run, so this time I should get a pretty colored one. And I need to zoom to make it visible to you. And it hasn't worked at all well, because that's what happens in a live environment. I'm going to have to do some work on that. Now I'll just see if I put this package in here. There's a package which helps you do this without, oh no, I haven't installed it. Let me put a name of a package in the script. And this is a useful thing, because I'm going to send you this script in about half an hour. If you want to put a comment that the computer ignores, if you put a hash or 2 hashes at the beginning, you see it's gone blue, you can write a comment to yourself. So you may find it easier to use the esquisse package. Now, the esquisse package is a rather good one, because I'm not going to do it now because we don't have time, but it helps you when you're first learning how to do these graphs. It allows you to drag and drop things just like you might have done with Excel, and then that writes the code for you, and then you can copy the code into your script. And I showed it to a friend from the New York Times, who was always getting into trouble with the New York Times graphics department because they thought his scripts were crap. And now he uses Esquisse to write a nice, tidy script, and it looks as if he's amazing. I'll just leave that as a comment, because you're going to have a copy of this at the end of the session. But I don't know why it's being so awkward at the moment. Let's look back at that plot. That's just not right. Let's see. Company. Well, what I could do actually, just to show you another way that you can quickly change this, is an extra little thing you can do called faceting. That's making a mini graph. So facet wrap, and then you say, and I want you to use the main activity name. May not work because we're not having a great day. It's partly worked. Yeah. So now, but just by putting that thing called facet wrap, you can see my screen, can't you? Yeah. It's made 4 sub ones. So it's saying, right, here's the thermal power stations, and okay, I'm going to have to tidy up the legend at the bottom. I'll do that in a minute. And we can say intensive aquaculture has just done that, and then whatever this, and then urban wastewater treatment is doing this, and we can see, these will be company names here. So these are the guilty companies. So this is basic inorganics. This is the worst company for urban wastewater. So it's quite, one of the things I love about this is making these facets, and you can see them in a lot of newspapers now. The Economist, the New York Times, not so much the Guardian. I think the Telegraph are using them. The BBC is using R, where you can see this sort of graph that people are using, and there's a whole cheat sheet like this, which tells you all the different ways you can set. Do you want ticks? Do you want colors? Do you want? I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and I can't do it in a 2-hour session. But the important thing about, in a way, the important thing about R, and particularly Tidyverse, is that it's built to make graphs easier. And I'll tell you, I put this in a note because I'm going to send this to you shortly. And that is, there is every Tuesday, there is a hashtag on Twitter called Tidy Tuesday, using the Tidyverse on a Tuesday. And this group put out a random data set, usually quite a big one. And then anybody who wants to can use that data and make and have a go at making a visualization. And that's quite fun in itself, because you see people's efforts, and you can see it's really interesting to, I spend an hour sometimes on a Tuesday looking at some data, and I draw some graphs, And then you see what other people did. So they've all looked at the same data on the same day, and people have had different takes on it. They've analyzed it in totally different ways. They've done pretty pictures with it. They've done all sorts of things that I wouldn't imagine. So that's quite interesting. And the good ones publish the code they use. So I can copy what they did and learn from it. But there's a brilliant trainer called David Robinson. And he does a screencast every Tuesday for free, where he takes the data that he's never seen before and he plays around with it until he gets a nice visualization. And they're all there as a sort of library on his GitHub page. And he's a really good trainer, and I have learned 80% of what I know about Tidyverse from watching his screencasts. See David. Right. Let's see, we've got half an hour to go.
Jonathan, just scroll back a couple of lines, because Sarah's wondering whether the fill didn't work because it needed brackets rather than an equal sign. Don't know if you're further up, I think.
No, it's there. It's in the ggplot bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
I can try it. I can put fill equals. I can still do main activity. See what happens. It's gone wrong again. It's done the colors, but and it's ignoring the facet wrap for some reason.
I think she's suggesting that maybe it needs brackets itself.
No,
the fill itself.
no.
No?
It's possible, but no. I know that that's not wrong. Okay. Yeah, but thanks for the idea. It should work. Yeah. I don't know why it's not.
Because she says when she tried it, it didn't work either. But that bit was underlined in red as perhaps the reason for not working. But anyway.
No, I'm afraid not. I wish it was that simple. There's something. It's something to do with columns and bars. I wanted to show you one other thing that's quite fun to do, and that is I'm going to grab something I've already written somewhere else because it's so complicated I don't want to type it. So I'm going to grab this and then talk you through it. Just make sure that those are the right names. Okay, right. Okay, this might not work. So before I do anything, I better actually top 20 underscore. This may not work. This could be a disaster. Top 20. What did I call it before? Oh, water. Also, I remembered now, I need another package at the top. So I'm a very messy scripter, and I have to remember that you tend to do things in an order. So you load your packages first, then you bring in your data, then you crunch your data and reshape it to what you need, and then you do the pictures, the graphics. So I'm doing one called library maps. I'm hoping it's working. Yes. So now let's see if this works. Oops. No, I need to do another thing, which is, hang on, I need to take a copy. You may have guessed I've got another copy of R running on my own computer, just in case things went wrong. So I'm going to do, remember we did some values and things. I'm going to do something else here and put in a list of countries I'm interested in, call them EU countries. So I'm assigning the variable EU countries to this list. Now the C means whatever's in the brackets is a list, just does. C for concatenate, then open brackets, and then in quotes, Belgium, France, Germany. It's not all the EU, just bits of it. So if I run that, line 8, it will appear there as EU countries. Down here, oh dear, now what's it called? Point, I want those. Oh, I may have to point geometry line. Okay. Oh, it should work. So what I tried to do there, and I may have to do a bit more work on this point geometry. Oh, yeah, x equals y equals is you can tell it some points like latitude and longitude, and it will then plot them on a map. And then I've taken this thing called done geom point, and then I've told it I'm using a map with borders, and I want to take a world map, and I want it to be the list of countries that I called EU countries. But it's not worked because it doesn't like my object there. There could be, just check, always check the brackets and the commas. They're the things that go wrong first. No, that should work. Oh, I know why. We'll call this one GB releases. That's why. Nope. Size equals. Okay, I need to repair this. What I was going to do, it should, with something as simple as that, if you tell it the points to put and how big to make them, it will draw you a map. So it's total pollutant. Now, where is it called? GB releases. Total pollutant quantity kg. Right. So now, there.
Wow.
Oh, I'm feeling rather pleased with that. Except you'll see that, so it needs a lot more work because it's a way of just sort of visualizing something. So it's quite interesting because there's all this stuff that is up the west coast of Scotland. And then you've got stuff in the Midlands. This is because we only did GB releases. So in fact, I could just ask it to do the Great Britain. So I could say, read, what do I call it? Read, is it UK? Yeah. So I could say just UK and it will make a smaller map. Yeah, so let's zoom in. Yeah, so now it's just Britain. So by telling it I only want to look at, and rather annoyingly, they call region country because it's basically a US map builder, and therefore it doesn't talk about countries because it's talking about the US. But I could tidy it up, get a better projection, and then there's all this stuff out here because remember these were water releases we're looking at.
And the map builder, Jonathan, that's part of just the basic tidyverse.
Almost. You have to have a library called Maps, which has got map data in it. But you only need to use, you see, I haven't done anything more than saying geom point, which, remember I had geom column in the previous one. And then geom point is how you do scatter plots and things like that. And then within that, I just said, make it bigger if it's a large amount. So each of those dots on my map is one releaser, one factory or whatever. And then their sizes are, that's one, what's it? That's 100 million. that's 200 million, and that's 300 million kilos. So it's quite a lot in a year. I could add in Ireland by just telling it that it was Ireland as well. I won't waste time on that now. I'm going to just share this script now, so hold on a minute. I need to save it and then export it to you in case anybody wants a copy of it. So it's called Session Scripts. Sorry, it's just... where are you? Session Script. Okay.
And Jonathan, if we wanted to export
Yeah.
just the map as well, how do you do that?
I will just show you. That's pretty easy as well. Hold on. Just want to send that in. I'm going to send the script in the chat, so everybody's got the script that I've done in case they want to compare it with their own version. I'm going to stop sharing because, oh yeah. Oh, is it disabled? Is it not going to let me share a file? Ah. Okay, what I'll do is this then. This is going to be weird. I'm going to save the. I'm going to just send the entire text of that script. If you copy this from the chat and paste it into a clean script, it will mean. Oh no, it's chopped it off. Yes, it's run out of space, so I'll just make it a bit less. Right, you could just paste that into a script and it will be the same as mine, except for the last bit.
Fantastic.
But equally, I can always, I don't know why it's not letting me share today on Zoom, the actual file, but I could, you can go, let me think.
Because that script doesn't have any of the visualization, the graphs. I don't think, does it? That's just the.
No, it just has the visual. It just has the instructions on how to make it. So if you run it, it'll make the graphs. And you were asking. So for example, if I'm really inordinately proud of that, I can go to the export button, and I can save as. Sorry, I'm not. Sorry, I need to share my screen again. Beg pardon. Where is everybody? Right, share screen. So within the screen, you've got the plots over here. So here's the one with the map on it. Let's imagine I've actually completed it and I've found the worst, the best picture. I can either save it as an image or save as PDF by clicking on the export button. So I use Zoom to just have a look at it, and it opens up a different window. But if I want to actually send it to somebody, I click export, save as image, which is PNG or JPEG, or PDF file, and then send it to you. Usually, if you send it as an image, that's when you can send it to people in Adobe Illustrator and things like that.
Yes. And Jonathan, sorry, what you pasted only went as far, I think, maybe as line 20 lines, maybe. We're missing all the bottom bit.
Oh yeah, that's right. So I'll just
from 32. We've done. I think we've got down to line 32.
I think so too.
And then
I'll give you 34 to the end.
Yeah, please.
Yep, coming up. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. Okay. This is the bit that is the most maddening, even after a year of using Zoom, is getting it to show. Oh, there you are. Just as I give up, the chat appears. Here we are. Here's the end of it.
Brilliant.
That's from 32 onwards. So paste the second half. But also, when you realize how much stuff we've done, and it's only been 32 lines of code, so it's pretty efficient, really.
Efficient, yes, absolutely.
Okay, probably time for Q&A.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
anything for me to go back over?
Yes, well, brilliant. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Okay, so Stacey is up and running. Questions. Aside from Data Camp, Code Academy, and Data Quest, would you recommend any other resources for learning how to code?
Yes. My favorite, because it taught me everything I know, is, I'm going to type this in. There is this r4ds.had.co.nz. I give it out so often that I know it off by heart. R for Data Science by Hadley Wickham is this book, which, as you see, is just above my desk. That website I just shared is a free, that's where he wrote the draft of this book. Hadley Wickham is the author of the Tidyverse. So this is effectively the manual for the Tidyverse. It has exercises, it explains a lot. The exercises are quite fun. And I learned about half of what I know from that. And before I bothered buying the book, I had done a load of it using the exercises on that website. So that's the first thing I would do, is go there, because I'd been making almost no progress for about 2 years, just badly, desultorily looking at R. And then I happened on that, and I started to make rapid progress. Then I went to a seminar by Hadley Wickham the following year, which is when I really got going. But the book was really working for me, and it's free. I mean, the website version is free.
And to those of us, Jonathan, who maybe though are newcomers to coding per se, do we need an intermediate stage before we tackle a book like that?
No, actually, I can confidently say no. The exercises make perfect sense. He explains them so well. And the demos, you can you can copy the code and work along. And as you do it, you'll see why it's working and what's working. And he starts with actual simple visualizations and then moves on from there. And he uses the data that's built into R, so you don't have to download anything to start with. But if you do that, and you also, now that I'm out of my sharing my screen, I'll just get my the YouTube channel for David Robinson, because he is so good. I cannot recommend him highly enough. Right, so here he is. It's a very odd title of a very odd link. So this is David Robinson's YouTube channel. It's something weird called Safe for Democracy at the end, but there you go. And then do many people on here know about GitHub?
Yep, I think we mentioned it in Layla's session, I think.
Right.
But tell us more.
Well, GitHub it started off life as a place to work on files, on programs, particularly collaboratively, because it does version control. That's what it's really there for. But now more and more people are doing reproducible analysis, particularly also journalism, and they're saving and publishing their stuff on GitHub. So I'm going to share this works with the David Robinson channel that I've just shared. He publishes all the code he types live. He then publishes it on that GitHub. Sorry, that's the Tidy Tuesday. And then, sorry, that's where all the old Tidy Tuesdays are, which then go with David Robinson's webcasts. But if you want to get David Robinson's own screencast scripts, where you can then, if you can't quite follow at the speed he goes, you can get the script and then follow along. And I reckon I learned 80% of the rest. What I didn't learn from the Hadley Wickham book, I learned from those 3 links there. And I even though at the beginning I didn't know much, and a lot of it was over my head. And he does things like modeling and regressions and all sorts of stuff. But he also does loads of very good data cleaning, data reshaping, and then also very, very good graphics. And I learned loads just watching those, and I go back to ones that I haven't seen for a while and remind myself what he did. And I cannot recommend him highly enough. So if you go to the one that's the third one on that list, that's his scripts. Then the one with Tidy Tuesday written in it is where the R for Data Science community publishes the basic data that you're going to analyze each week, and the links to all sorts of useful things there. This feels more advanced when you start looking at it, but the sooner you dip into it and just learn maybe 2 bits of code in 1 week, you'll suddenly start to feel you're making progress. So when you look at a script like mine, not only will you realize what it's doing, but you'll also spot my mistakes. And then you'll know that you're really cooking with gas.
Thank you, Jonathan. Stacey, I'm going to come back to your other 2 questions in a moment, because I think I want to ask Damaso's question, which was, do you know of any GUI programs that use R as a base? It feels like R is great at digging into data sets, but coding the visualization is challenging for non-programmers. So I think if I'm right, Damaso, in summarizing your question, it's, you know, can we is there anything that's maybe just a little bit, I guess, maybe more user friendly at the front end that would just get us to the point, maybe, I guess, where we can maybe use some of the visualization capabilities of R?
Well, I hesitate to say this because I mean, I struggled at the beginning, and I've done this. I mean, we've only had 2 hours today. I would normally want to spend probably 6 hours to do it slower and go through it with you know, with a small number of people in detail. But if you don't panic and you actually, you know, read the books I've recommended and eventually watch a little bit of David Robinson and others, you will be surprised how quickly it starts to make sense. I mean, I'm going to put in the chat the name of a GUI version. This is, and you can see the letters NZ, meaning it's, you know, been built in New Zealand, and it's done by the people behind R, and it is a drag and drop GUI based around R. But I downloaded it. It's on my desktop, and I've never really used it because I'd rather improve my R than faff around with more GUI stuff. And some people think of R as being one of the simpler codes to learn, because the tidyverse, the kind of verbs that you use in the tidyverse are simple, easy to understand English, like filter and you know, count and tally and things like that. So it's not terribly difficult to learn. I spent the first probably 2 or 3 years of my R, having downloaded it and installed it, getting absolutely nowhere. But it was this Hadley Wickham book, the R for Data Science, that really started to unlock it for me. Then a couple of courses. I used some Data Camp, and then that was pretty much it. I did Data Camp for about a year, and I ought to say, sort of full, it's not exactly my disclosure, but if you hunt around on Twitter and on the web, there has been a big scandal at Data Camp about 2 years ago, where the CEO made inappropriate approaches to a female member of staff. It didn't go well. She got fired, and everybody who complained about the handling of the problem got fired. And this got out into the data science community, and huge numbers of people have boycotted Data Camp ever since, because they have never accepted the wrongness of what they did. And people lost their jobs over something where the CEO was in the wrong. I have to just add that because I can see there are quite a lot of women in this audience, and I just want you to be aware that DataCamp has a cloud hanging over it. In fact, I described this to a group I was working with this morning, and one guy, while I was still on the call, cancelled his DataCamp account. It's a sad thing, because some of their production, some of their training material is very good, but I don't like the idea of giving them money. And you can read all sorts of interesting things. There's a battle going on between them and our studio, and it's all very unpleasant, but it's all based around this one disco about 3 years ago.
So Jonathan, Cameron's asking, you know, taking all that together, how long do you think it's taken you, and I don't know, in hours, days, months, whatever, years, to feel competent with R? I mean,
in terms of investigating data and crunching your way through some quite big data sets, and I suppose going back to Ian's introduction a couple of hours ago, the great thing about R is it opens massive data sets quite safely and quickly. And so if you're doing big data, Excel is not an option. That said, I think if you use the materials I've talked about and stick at it and try and maybe give yourself a project to do, maybe not on deadline, but something where you really want to get somewhere, I think you could get competent in a couple of months. If you really had to, you could get, and you weren't stressed by a deadline, you could get competent in a week, using the sort of stuff that I've got here. And then when you get stuck because you want to do something, then you Google it. Or, I mean, that Hadley Wickham link, the r4ds.had.co.nz, will get you a long way. And then, as in a lot of coding things, you actually need a project of your own that means something to you, rather than just faffing around with I don't know, environmental stuff that I've given you. You need to look at some data that means something to you and a story you're trying to work on, and then you'll learn really quickly. I promise you.
And just finally, back to Stacey, do you think it's important to learn how to web scrape and clean data before you learn to, I guess, code with it or visualize it?
No, I think they're parallel. They're parallel processes in the sense that you can do one without the other, and you may well not need to do scraping, but you will need to do basic data analysis or exploratory data analysis, and being competent at that, and realizing how at the beginning it's quite clunky and slow in R, but suddenly, in my case, I'm finding myself saying to people, now I still teach Excel for beginners, and every now and again somebody will ask me a question and I'll say, I don't know that you can do that in Excel, but I do know how to do it in R, which, and it's just that happens so often. Now, there are some packages which will do scraping, and it used to be really difficult. It's still a little bit clunkier than I would like. I prefer scraping with other tools, but R will do it too. And you just need to look around. I have got, I suppose by now, possibly hundreds, certainly dozens of links on my browser to R tutorials, just useful tutorials I've found on a whole range of subjects. So if you get stuck, you could always email me via Ian. Yes. Is there an advantage to install? Well, firstly, I'm paying for RStudio Cloud, I'm paying £15 a month. And I don't want to sound mean, but just to illustrate this, I'm allowed 160 hours of computing time on it per month. This session, with about 20 plus of you, will have easily taken 50 hours of my time this month in one session. And if I go over 160, I start paying a penalty, which is why I'm going to remove your projects in a few days' time. But do carry on over the weekend. Well, installing RStudio locally it's free. It doesn't take up a huge amount of room. You can personalize it much more. and it's quicker. I mean, there are some things in RStudio Cloud which have simply not worked today. It's a bit clunky, even though I'm paying for it. It's ironic. The one that's clunky I pay for. The one that works seamlessly I don't pay for. If you want to get I'll just give you the links for the downloads, which is R for Windows is on the. I'll just give you the basic address. Well, you can export your projects to your laptop at any point, but you'll probably only have a couple of scripts on it, so it won't take long. But it does have the data we've been working with. So the R, they've just updated the version of R, so I've got to get a new one anyway. R for Mac is also coming into the chat right now, and then RStudio is available from. So yeah, going back to that question of why would you do it? It's quite useful when you start and you don't have to do much installation to do a cloud version. But really, why wouldn't you? Since it's free, why wouldn't you put it on your laptop? I suppose some people have work laptops which are locked down, in which case you could play with RStudio.cloud. There is a free version. You can do a certain amount on RStudio Cloud. I'm paying because I have fairly large numbers of projects and so on it. But you could learn without installing R by using RStudio Cloud for a while. But you will find that RStudio itself is a lot quicker.